This video is an appeal for help. John, teddytoot and myself have been working on adding to the range of tracks in Trainz. John helped me to get the procedural broad gauge track working, of which this here is a section, and it now functions as procedural track pretty successfully. There are a number of compromises in order to achieve it, but nevertheless I think it gives an adequate representation of broad gauge track. And now of course it means that we can have any junction that we desire for virtually angle of junction that we desire. I mean, there's plenty of others. I mean, single slips, double slips, crossovers, all those sort of things still to come presumably. So anyway, we've moved on from there, and John has always been very keen about being able to reproduce mixed gauge track, and so we've been experimenting, and we have a number of we've achieved a number of things with this, and you can see here some of the bits and pieces I've modeled in order to achieve this. On the left here we have, if I zoom in, we have a guide, a piece of fixed track which is a guide for the green is the center line of broad gauge track, and the red is the center line of standard gauge track. I won't talk about those two for the moment, but over here what I've got is standard gauge bulk road track. There's actually some ballast in there as well, but it's beneath the ground, so it's hidden, and it's simply to allow for the setting up of mixed gauge track using procedural track. So first of all I want to show you how to do the make the mixed gauge track junction. We can get this functioning as a junction with both of the junctions, as you'll see, operating together using junction link, but we have a problem with getting the signaling to work, and the problem of course is that Trainz sees mixed gauge track, and certainly the way that I've been trying to make it, as two separate railway lines, and the problem becomes then of course is to persuade it to that if one of the lines is occupied, then to prevent anything happening on the other line. But at the moment of course what happens is that it would treat it as two separate lines, and trains can literally pass through each other or pass alongside each other, blended into each other almost. So anyway, let's see how we can make a mixed gauge junction using procedural track. So first of all, let's lay a bit of my newly released procedural track, and we bring the spline point up until we're directly on that green node, and click, and it jumps into position. And then let's take the other spline point down here, and we do the same. Now you've got to remember that mixed gauge track is handed, that is, it's either left hand or right hand, and you've got to make sure that you get the correct version or the correct position for it. Let's see if that's going to straighten at all. No, it's not. Okay, so now we're going to bring in a junction, and for a junction what I'd like to do is I've been experimenting with this. I'm not sure if it's going to be that suitable or not, but this is what I've been trying with. Now this is that, again, this mixed gauge guide little doofer piece of, and again I'm going to bring in a piece of broad gauge TANE procedural track, click on the green to start my spline off in the correct position, and then just bring it in and connect it up and make the junction. And then I'm going to straighten this. No, I'm not, that's already straight. And there we have it. Now you can see here that these guidelines are swerving off the track, so that means this isn't correctly, hasn't got the correct angle. So what you want to do is just rotate this and bring those two parallel lines in until they're about in the middle, and that makes I thought it made the correct junction. What I have found with these is that you have to do a fair amount of manoeuvring but not like that. Maneuvering by moving to create a correctly angled junction. You can see there it's showing the red. So I'm going to bring that in a bit. Does that do it? No. There's one of these does it. I think maybe if I move in this one here. Or is it that I think I'm not giving it enough room to generate. You can see that there is no now we have it. There was no, you can see it was wrong because there were no points blades generated or frog generated. So positioning these is always a little bit complex. But there we are. So that looks like just a conventional procedural track junction. And now we bring in, and now at the moment I'm calling it mixed gauge test because that's all we're doing. We're just testing this. And I'm going to bring this in. Here we are. And I'm going to make the junction. I'm not going to worry about it too much. Well, I suppose I can straighten it. And now we have to do what we used to do with those old animated wired up points. We've now got to bring it into position. And this will snap into position, and you hover it over the red node. There we are, to line it up. Let's just move that in a bit. You can see where we're going with this, how it's going to work out. And bring this over and hover it over the red node again. Make it connect, and this one's the same. There we are. And now we've got to position this, and that's why I put these lines in. I hope they're long enough. They're not long enough for this one. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move this piece of the guide. I'm going to move it up a bit. And all this is basically doing is make sure you try and keep it straight. All that's doing is extending, pushing those guides up. So let's bring it back a little bit. I'm doing all this by eye, not by measurement. I mean, I suppose I could put a ruler along there. Let's just straighten that up a little bit. Whereas it's just on that. Okay, so now we can go back into the track and maneuver that into position. And so let's pick up one of these. See which one we've got. We've got the broad gauge one. So we bring that over to the green, which is actually obscured by the standard gauge one at the moment. But then we pick up the standard gauge one, which I'm trying to do. There it is. Bring that over and position it onto the red. Keep an eye on where the points blades are, because basically that's about the position you want to achieve, so that these points blades do look uniform. Okay, so that gives us our mixed gauge junction, and if we were to play about with changing the direction of the junction, there's the standard gauge one gone and back, and then there's the broad gauge one. We've actually got a bit of that one's left as well, because this is the common rail is actually duplicated by the standard gauge. What other problems do we have with this? We don't have a frog here, and we can't work out how to do that. What else haven't we got? The rails here actually cross over the frog, because that's the standard gauge, that's the broad gauge crossing through the frog. Right, okay, so but within those limitations I think it still looks a heck of a lot better. Now the other thing that we use is in this junction link, J-U-N, junction link, there it is, junction link. Now what we're going to do is link these two together. There's the little beastie, and we've got junction 12 and junction 14 here. So let's open, where are we? Oops, let's put the two here. I need the one. So junction 1 is going to be 12, and junction 2 is going to be 14, and then it offers you symmetric or asymmetric, in other words together or in opposite directions. So we want symmetric. And now if we fire the junction point, for those who haven't seen the wonders of junction link before, they both can move together. I mean, you would use that for a crossover or something. Number of limitations there, of course. I mean, we've got a this linking piece between the points blades. It also goes through the standard one. I think we can live with that. Okay, so that's fine. That's no problem at all. What we need is a signal link that now works within TANE and Trainz 2019. Up to Trainz 2012, I know Signal Link did work. The widget that was available did work okay, but it doesn't work it stopped working for TANE. So we want to try and reinstate that, because this allows us to make these junctions, these mixed gauge junctions. It's a bit fiddly to do. You've got to muck about with it a little while to get it just right, especially this bit here. Now this is one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is, instead of using these little fixed track sections, now I haven't updated this at all, but over here is my mixed gauge bridge track with both the standard and broad gauge. This is a very old model now from Trainz 2004 period, TC3, and that's my procedural track there. So this one is a possibility, because we can for this one we can join up, that we can bring in the, I think it will work. I haven't tried this. John says it works. I trust him. I'll have to bring it over at a distance there, and then, yeah, that's what he showed me. So that works quite well. Let's just bring these up, but you do have to manually, visually bring those together. Although if I produce this to match this track, if I produce this one to match this one, then we would only use the procedural track to create the junctions, and this bridge track would then act as a mixed gauge track for the all other the rest of the running lines, that sort of thing. Okay, but what we need is signal link. We definitely, so this video is not just to show you where we are with mixed gauge track, but it's also as an appeal to anybody out there who knows anything about scripting, to help us try and work out what we should do to create or what, do the script. We know nothing about scripting. To me it's the black arts. So if anybody out there can work out how to do it, and can just get us a signal link that link the signals together, then what that will do is it will prevent trains, we hope, from running two trains on the same bit of mixed gauge track, because by linking the signals it will prevent a standard gauge train moving along here if there's already a broad gauge train sitting here, because the broad gauge train will trigger the signal, the block will be occupied, and so a standard gauge train can't get into it. That's the theory. So that's what we want to try and achieve. But here, for example, I've also made these two pieces of fixed track, and as you can see they're basically crossovers, and again they require just a bit of an addition. So first of all, let's add the procedural broad gauge either side, and remember broad gauge is always going for the green, Great Western green. Okay, and then at the moment it's test, but it will get called something much more sensible. And bring this into the red. There we are, and then I've just got to position this one, because I haven't got any fixed track gauge or anything there to demonstrate it. There we are. And what this does, let's put one in over here just to make it look right. Now, and this is providing us with something that was done in the prototype, in the actual Great Western Railway mixed gauge track. And you'll see that there's two of them. I've made two, and pretty obvious what it does is it moves the standard gauge train from this side of the broad gauge over to this side. And you would do that if there was a platform here. You move and normally in the running lines the if I was to move this, so actually the on one side there, if I move this piece of fixed track, this is the arrangement that they would be in. There should be 6 foot between them. So in other words, what you would have is moving, if it was proceeding this way down the track, it would move over to the platform edge. But then once it's left the platform, it moves back out to the middle of a double track. So those are just simply to provide a bit more authenticity for it. So there we are, that's where we are with mixed gauge track at the moment for Trainz, using Great Western Railway procedural 7 foot gauge track and my own spoofed up 4 foot 8 and a bit, the wretched little wagon gauge of so-called standard gauge. If I put it on wireframe, you'll see there, look, come in a bit there, that's hidden underground. That's actually to make sure that the standard gauge track will work properly. It's pretending to be ballast, but Trainz has been told to put it down below the ground, or rather that's the way I've made the mesh. So there we are, that's mixed gauge track. I hope that's of interest. No plans to release it at the moment until we get the signal business sorted out and make a decision about whether we want to use the bridge rail, or stick with the procedural track plus using my little gauge or guide widget things, whatever you call them, I forget what I call them now, guide, mixed gauge guides, I don't know. I suppose it's what I've released both, that's the way to do it, and then you can do whichever you prefer. But I think that's the solution to producing mixed gauge track. It's fiddly, it requires patience, but once you've laid the track and you're happy with the layout, I think it looks very effective. And once we have the signals working, then I expect to see, and I appeal to all you Trainzers out there, I expect to see plenty of mixed gauge layouts, really demonstrating how brilliant Brunel's 7 foot gauge was when compared to the wretched little 4 foot 8.5 of George Stephenson, Robert Stephenson's narrow gauge, wagon gauge, standard gauge. Okay, there we are. That's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it's been of interest. If it has, and if you've got anything to contribute towards our creation of mixed gauge track, then please do post a comment or post on the forum or contact me direct, whichever you prefer. If you can help with the signalling issues, please do contact us. We'd be very, very keen to hear from you. If you've enjoyed the video, please give me a thumbs up and perhaps even subscribe to my channel, because it all helps to boost the old ego, and it feels good to know that you've got people subscribed and are interested in what you're doing. So there we are, mixed gauge track for Trainz. Who'd have thought it? We might actually be getting somewhere near producing something that works.